Hey guys, today we're talking about yet another modern on a budget deck, and it's going to be vampires this time. And we're going to dive right in. It's going to be half tribal, half aristocrats, and I really like the deck. So first up we have 4 Knight of the Ebon Legion. Knight of the Ebon Legion is it took a lot of showed a lot of power in standard, so I decided to take it in modern, and I am liking the results I'm getting. It slowly builds up its power and toughness as time goes on, or you can pay mana and just give it a huge buff immediately. Next up is Viscerasir, which is a 1-drop 1/1 vampire, which lets us sacrifice a creature to scry 1. Now this is going to give us kind of an aristocrat-y feeling to the deck, and it's going to allow us to filter through our deck. Part of the reason why we do want to have aristocrats or like that kind of a feeling to our deck is for a card like Cordial Vampire. Whenever Cordial Vampire or another creature dies, put a wound counter on each vampire you control. Now that is a very powerful ability because it makes our opponent, well, 1, want to kill Cordial Vampire right on the spot, but 2, it makes our opponent think twice about the removal they're using, because we'll have other big threats on the board, but Cordial Vampire will get extra value out of it. It's also, Viscerasir can sacrifice itself, so don't forget that. But Viscerasir can do that. Cordial Vampire is a very big threat in here. But another thing that we can do with the Aristocrats theme is we have Silver Smoke Ghoul, which says at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Silver Smoke Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You can also sacrifice it to draw a card, which you may end up doing every once in a while. But some of the things that can bring it back from the battlefield are, if I can find them, Gifted Aetherborn, if you put a counter on it, there are several ways you can put a counter on it, or you can pump it up. And so this card is very good because you can just keep sacrificing Silver Smoke Ghoul and keep attacking or even defending, right? Yes. No, it's only your end step. So you can keep attacking, and you can keep, and people don't like to block death touch. Their creature will die. But it's a way to keep bringing your Silver Smoke Ghoul back. And another way you can do it is actually Sorin Impious Bloodlord, which is one of the best cards in this deck. +1, target creature you control gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. If it's a vampire, put a counter on it. You can get Lifelink here and pump up your creature here to bring Silver Smoke Ghoul back. But you can also just do it to pump up all of your guys. The other +1 is you may sack a vampire. When you do, it deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. So you get if you sacrifice a creature, you get a free Lightning Helix every turn, and it's a plus ability. And if you sacrifice Silver Smoke Ghoul, which happens to be a vampire, and then you deal 3 damage to either their creature, them, whatever, and then you gain 3 life. At the end of your turn, just from sacrificing Silver Smoke Ghoul will return itself along with any other Silver Smoke Ghouls that are in your graveyard. So it's kind of it really is a free Lightning Helix. Next up is -3. You may put a vampire creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, and that's going to be a way that we can just put things out if we really just need to empty our hand onto the board. But quite often we're just going to be using it for those first 2 abilities. Okay, next up, that is our Aristocrats theme to the deck. And so to highlight that, we do have our removal spell, Fatal Push, which will trigger from Revolt very often. But the second half of the deck is kind of the tribal synergy of the deck. So we have things like Captivating Vampires, giving all of our vampires +1/+1, and we can tap 5 vampires at instant speed to gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Now, if we were to gain control of, for example, like a Scourge of Skyclaves, that is a very powerful vampire that we can just keep swinging in. We can also just take any utility creature that our opponent needs. Another tribal card that we have is Stromkirk Condemned. Now, you might say, oh, but it says discard a card, vampires you control get +1/+1. Like, discarding card isn't that great in here. But it's a way to get use out of those extra lands in your hand, so you can keep them in your hand. But also, it synergizes pretty well with, well, one, with Dusk Legion Zealot. It enters the battlefield, draws you a card, so it doesn't empty your hand. But Asylum Visitor. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And it has Madness, so we can even discard this and play it off of the Madness. So that's going to give us repeated card draw and Madness. The next card we're going to talk about is, we're going to talk specifically about this card. It's in here because it is able to replace itself in your hand. So you're getting just a vampire onto the board. You can use it to sacrifice to Viscerasir for Cordial Vampire, or you can use it to get to steal from your opponent with Captivating Vampire, or you could even discard this with a Stromkirk Condemned. Typically, you're going to want to discard the cards with Madness or the cards with just the land cards. So next up are our lands. Evolving Wilds to trigger Revolt on Fatal Push, but also to thin out our deck. Spawning Pool to give a little bit of utility to our mana base, and Swamps because it's the color of our deck. Our sideboard is Cling to Dust for graveyard decks, Duress for decks that need that, typically combo decks or other decks that we just need to get stuff out of their hand. For example, against Control, if you cast Duress on them, they're probably going to counter it, but likelihood is you're going to take their counterspell anyway. Vampire Hexmage for decks that win with things that put counters on stuff. For example, Planeswalkers or Walking Ballista. If you do this, it requires them to use all of those counters at once. Usually, you don't want to do it on Walking Ballista will usually just kill it, but this is just a way to deal with things that have counters, and you can bring it back with Sorin, obviously. Ashiok is a way to deal with graveyard decks as well as dealing with decks that search their libraries like Titan. This deck is able to this card is also able to stop fetch lands. Next card is Damping Matrix. Now, Damping Matrix is a way for us to kind of get Karn the Great Creator's passive without needing to go off budget. And this is a way we can just stop certain decks that we just need to bring these in. So decks that get a lot of utility out of artifacts. For example, if you were to play this against a Death Shadow deck, they would not be able to use their Baubles, and they would not be able to use their Bomat Couriers. I think those are the only artifacts in the deck, but those are the main reasons we're running Damping Matrix for artifact decks like that. Now, the deck is a very grindy, aggressive deck that can actually go into the long game. I would really call this kind of a mid-range deck. And it seeks to get a lot of value out of sacrificing your creatures, discarding your creatures, and getting them back from your graveyard. Anyway, if you enjoyed the deck, please let me know below. I really like this deck. I've been playtesting all of these before I post them, and I've playtested them in the past before as well. As you can see, I'm posting these videos in rapid succession. But these decks are really cool. They're really fun, and surprisingly, they work really well for a budget deck in a metagame that's not budget. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, let me know below. If you have any questions about strategy, synergy, or card choices, please ask. I will look at them and I will answer them. I will see you next time.